Welcome to Programming Rainbow. In this video, we will be continuing on the series where we configure Neovim, the NvChad version of Neovim. In this video, we will be configuring Python again, but this time I'm going to be using the Dreams of Code video. So I'm going to try to convert the old Dreams of Code video from about a year ago. I'll show it to you over here. This one here. That shows you how to set up for Python, but this is using the old NvChad and it's using the null-ls and everything else. So I'm going to try to show you how to convert that over. Now, he's also setting up dap and everything else. I am not any kind of expert in using this, but I believe I have at least his configuration and some add-on setup that it should work. So this is his video. If you want to go check it out, it's Dreams of Code. It's for Python. The code is also in his GitHub here, and we'll just kind of be referencing that. But I also just have the code down here, and I've been playing around with it and doing different things. I've added a couple things, but for the most part, I just try to convert it over. So it's going to be slightly different than my video because I'm going to use the linter that he used and the same setup that he was using for conform, or not, he was using null-ls, but for that, So let's dive into it. So I'm just going to I'm going to try to go quickly through a lot of the stuff because people have probably watched my other video. So I'm going to still start from the beginning. This should be the code if you've done my very first video on just setting up Neovim for NvChad. This is where you should be at. So you're going to have syntax highlighting already, but nothing else. There's no linting. There's no formatting. There's no language server running. There's no anything, but there is Treesitter. It does have Python installed even without us asking for it to do it. So we do have the syntax highlighting automatically, but we can't do anything else. So if I mess up this line, it doesn't complain about it. Okay, so in the Dreams of Code video, he is doing some basic, let me just show you what he's got going on here. So what happened between NvChad, it went from 2.0 to 2.5, and they vastly changed the way that they were handling their file structures and everything else. So they were putting plugins in just a plugins file, plugins.lua, and it would look something like this. This is now in plugins folder, and it's init.lua. So this stuff pretty much will come straight over. We can just bring this over, but let me just show you what else is happening here. In configs, I think it used to be, so I'm not sure if he's been updating this to 2.5. It looks like he's been updating this code to 2.5 actually. So this might be a 2.5 version, but it's still using null-ls. Yeah, this is the way it is in 2.5. I don't think this is the way he has it set up in his video. So I'm not sure if this is the right code I should be looking at. But null-ls also got deprecated. The person working on it, the project was way too big and too complicated. So this is not related to the NvChad 2.0 to 2.5. But so null-ls is kind of on the out. And so all my stuff is attempting to use what the modern replacement would that be. So null-ls kind of took care of a whole bunch of stuff, and it took care of linting and formatting and other things. So now it's the LSP is LSP config, and the linting is done by nvim-lint, and the formatting is done by nvim-conform. So all that kind of looks different. That's a bit that needs to be changed. So, but it looks like this isn't, well, this is still null-ls. So I'm not going to have null-ls in here at all. So I kind of watched his video and I tried to redo all the steps he did. So he's basically using black, Mypy. He was using ruff. I think it looks like he's removed it from here maybe. Yeah, I'm wondering if I'm not looking at his correct code anymore. But yeah, I was watching his video, but I did come into here just to grab some code because I didn't want to type it all out. So, but the basic things is before we get into dap and stuff, he is setting up Pyright, just basic. So the Pyright over here, he's just doing a basic Pyright setup, nothing really special happening there. He's using Mypy for linting, and he's also using ruff. And again, those are just basic setups. So I'm just going to convert that over to the modern style with nvim-lint and he's using black, and he didn't even do any setups on that. So I'm just going to run through the setups I did in the last video, but using those real quick. So let's just start with that. So I'm gonna use my reference material here. So I didn't tell you, but if you want to follow along, go to github.com programming rainbow, and this is NvChad -2.5 right here. And if you scroll all the way down, you'll see that I added in a Python, which was for my last Python video. But then I've added in this Dreams of Code one because he had all this DAP, everything else set up. The debug, what is it? Adapter protocol. So yeah, I'm just going to rush through getting to that stage. That's basically what's changed. So he's just using the default thing. I added in on my own turning the type check off. In his video, he makes some mistakes. He actually says that ruff is working, I believe, because he gets some purple messages on the screen, and they're actually not coming from ruff at all. They're coming from Pyright, and you can't actually disable them at all. But the messages you'll get from Mypy will be duplicated with Pyright, so we're going to disable that. So let's do this first then. So in lspconform, right here we have, sorry, not conform, lspconfig. I'm going to add in, this is just a thing I've done so that it automatically installs for me if it's not on my system. So I'm just going to add in here, Pyright. This is just going to tell mason-lspconfig to automatically grab and install this for me. Okay, now I could put it in here and follow what he did. What he did is just a basic default one, so I could just throw the name in here and it would work. But I do actually want to add in the extra config so it doesn't give me double. So I'm going to use this, but you could just put it in the default as well. I'll just copy it over here. That's the only thing I'm really doing with this at all. And you can just use what I used before in my prior, that is also relevant in my prior Python video. So right here, the only thing I'm actually doing above the default is just adding in this analysis type checking mode off. And he, like I said, on his video, he didn't do anything. So you don't need to add this. You could just put in the default servers up here and you'd be good. But right here is just so we don't get duplicate messages about everything that Mypy is going to tell us. Okay, so that's all we really need to do to get a language server up and running. And I will just disable this for a second and put it up into here just to show you what I'm talking about with the messages. So since we set up this mason-lspconfig in the very first video, when I restart my terminal over here, I'm automatically going to get it being installed. It says installing Pyright right at the bottom down here. And if we open up a file, the language server should kick on in a second here. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'll restart it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to, just for completeness, I'm going to go into treesitter and I'm going to add Python, even though it's actually already installed. And now let's go to the linting. So he's using two different lintings. He's using, let's go to the page here. And I just want to show where I got this bit here with the type checking mode off. I got that in the actual, if you just type in Pyright and you go to the page here, and if you go into configuration, I know it's very white. Microsoft doesn't like people. It's hard to look at. But if we were to type it in, let's see here. Type checking mode, yeah, okay. So this is telling us the things that we can do. So this is kind of the documentation. If you're looking for it, there is a GitHub page as well that is not white. Well, at least it's not white for me. But the other page is very white. That's where I'm getting that information from. And we're going to see hinting later on that you should be able to turn off this right here. Where is it? Variable. This report, where's the variable one right here? This doesn't work, or I'm missing something, or I'm not understanding something, because by default, this is set to none, as in it's not supposed to tell us this information. But let me show you that it does. Oh, not here, sorry. Over in the Python code. So if I were to make a variable here that I'm not using, see this? There's no way I've been able to figure out how to disable this. This is definitely coming from Pyright. It's an unused variable, and that setting does not control this at all. And this is what he said in Dreams of Code. He said, see, this is coming from ruff. It's not coming from ruff. It's coming from Pyright. And even though there is a setting to disable it over here, port unused, this is already disabled by default, but even though that you still set it to and I've tried all different things, and I've asked the LLMs and everything else, and I just am not able to disable that warning because, it'll be a duplicate as well. So, or it just might be annoying to you. So that's going to be on, and that's coming from Pyright, and I don't know. I think I've seen a couple bug reports about it too, but I didn't really understand if it was being taken care of. So yeah, so we'll get rid of that. That's from Pyright. So if you just wanted to know where that was coming from. So over in my configuration here, that's the language server. So that gives us language support and linting. If you turn this off, then it limits some of the linting, but you still get some messages. But we are going to use Mypy for linting that you'll see down here, not conform. So this is very straightforward right here. We're just saying for any Python type file, we're going to use Mypy and ruff, and this is going to be in nvim-lint, and it's automatically going to install for us. We'll go into lint here. So linters by file type. So we say Python, that's the file type. We add a table, and we can just put them both in here. I'm putting both of these on now that they're not installed on my system. If you're using system installed ones, you'll want to add them to the, let me save this real quick. For the last thing we did, the LSP config, if this is on your system, you don't want Mason to install it, just don't put it here. You still need to configure it here or down here. But this right here is just about installing it through Mason. So if it's on your system, if you're using a system installed one, don't bother putting it here. This is only for Mason. For lint, this one is going to automatically install and automatically configure. So if you don't want it installed, if you're using a system one, go to mason-lint and add it to the ignored list. So then it will not install it. It'll still configure it, but it will not install it. This whole package right here is about automatically installing things for you. So whatever my configuration is, I can just drop it in and start it up, and it just installs everything that needs to be installed for me. So if you're using a system one, add it to the ignored list. Okay, where are we at? So that's all we need to do here. I'm just going to make sure this is saved. And I'm going to close some of these down so I'm not flipping through all of them. And so here I'm going to reopen this. Now we should have, it's installing ruff down here, and it should also be installing Mypy. So we're going to have these duplicates, remember. So it's going to complain about the next line down. So there we go. The number one up here, this is done by Pyright, and number two down here, this is, so let's disable one so we can see the difference. So I am going to disable the Pyright messages because I don't want to see them. So I'm just going to enable this and then remove it from the default one. So it's The difference between this is this runs, anything that's in this default servers runs this for loop. And this one is just me doing it manually. The same stuff happens here, but then I have this configuration that's just setting this one thing here. So let's save that. Let's go and disable ruff. So now we just have Mypy that's doing linting. It's not perfect. We're still going to get some stuff from Pyright, but it should just mostly be Mypy doing linting. I'm going to restart this. Hold on, type checking. I'm checking indentation, not type checking. I had another, here it is. This is what I had. See, that's the type checking disabled. It's disabled in one, but not the other. So if we were to hover this, this is coming from Mypy. So we can make it come from the other one as well. If I disabled this and just use the default up here. Now I should have two messages, at least from this right here. There we go. So yeah, there's type checking. Let's check ruff. So this one should still just be the message from, yeah, that's the message from Pyright still. I'm just going to disable Pyright, and then I'll just get the answers that I'm trying to get. Because Dreams of Code fell into the same thing. He was talking about something that appeared to be right, and then when I was running through the code, I realized it wasn't at all. Okay, so we have ruff now and nothing else. So this new line is coming from ruff. Because I have no language server running right now. And there it goes, it's left. So let's try some other things. That's coming from ruff. So Mypy is doing type checking, and ruff is doing all the static analysis for syntax errors, things like that. So do we get one from here as well? No, we don't. What about down here? Yeah. So basically, and these are all also being duplicated in Pyright as well. So you have all these different things. This is going to show up as two messages. One's going to be from Pyright. One's going to be from ruff. Okay, so reset this whole thing, and we'll say that the going into lspconfig, and we are going to, none of this is supposed to be here. This is all, I deleted this before. It'll be here later, just not for now. So these unused variables and everything else, they didn't actually seem to do anything. Like I said, I couldn't get them to work, so I just removed them. So we ended up with just the type checking turned off. So right here, where with the LSP, you can either do nothing or disable. This is just for type checking. I don't have anything else disabled, just the type checking. And Pyright, I'm going to leave that for now. That's going to be it for that part. For linting, so we have ruff is doing our static analysis, and then Mypy is doing the type checking. And the type checking has been disabled in Pyright, but nothing else has been disabled, so you might have a lot of duplicate messages. And I'm not entirely sure if ruff has been deprecated or not. I thought I read that somewhere, but I'm not actually sure about that. So anyway, that's linting. It all seems to work. So let's close that. And let's see where we're at. So for conform, he's just using black, and I just added in this that I did in the last video. He doesn't add anything in for it at all, but this 80 lines, you don't have to do this. Again, I just added it in because I felt it was nicer to put that in. But he's using black, so let's just set that up. That's conform is what handles formatters. It's already set up. We just need to add in for Python, and it'll be the table. And it'll be black. And this will automatically get installed for us. And if you want to add in the configurations in here, I'm not actually sure if I think I copied the whole thing. So I'm going to paste that. Yeah, I did. If you have any other configurations, you'll just want to add it in next to any of the others. Looks like we got an extra line here. So that's this again is going to automatically be downloaded because of mason-conform. And if you don't want it to, you can go into mason-conform and put it on the ignore list if you have it on your system. So it's going to use Mason to download this, and this is just saying use the fast version, and we want it to break lines at 80 characters. So our lines will only be 80 characters long before black breaks them up into smaller lines. Nothing super exciting happening there. We've seen this in the last video. So let's go back in here. I'm just going to restart it. And let's see if I can just show a long line. Oh, it broke up this one right here because it was longer than 80. And if you don't have black set to that, you might get complaints. I know I was using Flake 8. Flake 8 was complaining about it. I'm not sure if Ruff complains about it. But Flake 8 definitely complains about that. So setting black to 80, you can set it to whatever you want. But so if we undo this, we'll see that it was a longer line because it's at 84 characters. And if we save it, black has broken it up. I'm just going to leave that stuff there. We're going to carry on. So that's all you really need to do for conform, which is your formatter. And it automatically formats when you save because of this down here. But there is a way to manually format it as well. Okay, so moving past there, let's get into, we've already done linting. So now we have this debug adapter, okay? This is not too different from what he set up when the way he was just putting it into the plugins. It's really going to look the same. But the key difference that you may see is I don't configure anything in here. So his code, let's see if we can look at his. Let's see in the plugins. So he's in here and he's like adding code in here. I don't like that because we're going to have a bunch of things in here. So what happens is this config part right here, I'm going to just tell that config part to load another file, and that other file will be in configs, and that's going to have all the code. So in my code, you'll see me taking this bit out right here and literally putting this into another file, and then just in here, I'm just going to require that file. So under config function, I'm going to require that file. So if we look at mine, config function, and then I'm requiring configs-dap. Configs means it's a folder, and then there's a file in that folder called dap.lua. So this says, hey, load whatever's in dap.lua, and what's in there? What's in dap.lua is this for this file. Okay, so that's a main difference in what I'm doing. Mostly I'm just doing the same thing, but I'm always passing it off to another file because I don't want to pollute up that plugins init.lua file. It has just already a bunch of stuff in it. I don't want to be configuring stuff inside of there. I'd rather configure them into their own files. And I think that's the way that it's meant to be done, but you can do it however you want. So yeah, let's start with this. So each of these are going to go into the init.lua. That's where his plugins were before. Now in NvChad, it's in plugins/init.lua. So let's check that out. I'm going to close this. So plugins folder, init.lua, this is where everything's at. So I'm just going to go down to the bottom here and add a new one. So this is referring to GitHub. This is the GitHub page. So if you were to go to github.com/ and you put this in, you would end up on the page. And I'm just saying to configure it, and I'm just passing it off to another file, which I'll call dap.lua in config. So I'm going to make a file in here. And that's what all these files are from. They're all from this one right here, configs mason-conform. That's mason-conform right here. That's loading this Lua file right here. Okay, so this one is just saying, hey, we need to get our configuration from dap.lua in the configs folder. So let's do that. And I'll show what I'm doing here with this one too. So I'm going to save this. And it's probably going to tell me something's been changed. Oops, sorry. It should be over here. Save it over here. There we go. And so in here, I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to hit A, and I'm going to call this dap.lua. And I have a new file, and I'm going to paste in what I had. And what I'm doing here is I want to set key mappings. Now, the key mappings for NvChad are actually here. There's a whole bunch preloaded behind the scenes for us, but all the stuff that we want to add, we could put here. However, these key mappings only get loaded in a specific situation when dap is loaded. So I don't want them always loaded. Because I don't want them always loaded, I'm going to load them here. So if we look here, we have this local map, and that we're just taking vim keymaps.set. We're calling it map. You know, we could basically take this right here and put it right here where map is. And this is how you make a key map. So I'm doing the same thing. So I'm going to take what he had before. He made an M table. That was the old way in the old NvChad 2.0, how you were meant to do it. So this is the conversion of the same thing. This is being loaded when this file is being loaded, which when init.lua loads dap, it's going to load this config file. So this is for normal mode. This is the key press is the leader key, and then the D, and then the B key. So the leader key plus D plus B. And then it's going to run this command right here, which is dap toggle breakpoint and an enter. So that's going to set a breakpoint. And then this is just a description right here. This table here is just a description. So he had this one. He didn't have this one here, which is the dap continue. So I'm just adding this one in for convenience, and I just called it a DR. So DB sets a breakpoint. DR is going to just run it or continue or start or whatever. So I've just added this one in, but it's this very much the same idea. So basically, whenever dap gets loaded, we are just setting these two key bindings, key maps. So these key maps only get set when dap is loaded. Okay, so that's going to be dap. Let's we still have more stuff going on though with it. There is also the UI. Now the UI, I put them together, but the UI depends, and it's not in his video because maybe the dependency happened after his video was made, but it depends on another package to be installed as well. So he has it in his repo now, obviously, as well. But so I'm going to put both of that in. So I'm just going to grab this. We're going to go back into init.lua, and below the last one, I'm going to add a new one. Now, you notice on this top one up here, I didn't, on these other ones, I put event very lazy. I don't have an event set for this. Basically, this is going to be, dap is going to be loaded by something else. It's not going to be loaded by lazy. It's not going to be loaded by a file type. Something else is going to load it. And dap-ui can load it, but something else is going to load dap-ui as well. So that's what's happening here. I don't need to set anything to load this because this is going to be, with lazy vim, it's going to be loaded by something else. So right here, this one as well, it's literally just the package name, again, from GitHub, and there's no configuration, nothing happening here. For dap-ui, nvim-dap-ui, we need both the original dap package up here, and we need this package here. So that's why I've added that. So these are the dependencies. So when this needs to be loaded, it's going to require these other two get loaded first. So whenever this gets loaded, this has got to be loaded, and this has got to be loaded. And it takes care of that stuff for you. And then we see the same configuration thing that we keep seeing here. This is telling me, hey, the configuration for dap-ui is going to happen in, I'm going to make a new file over here, I'm going to call it dap-ui.lua, okay? So let's save this file. Let's go over here, and I'll just put a dap-ui lua, okay? And we'll see what we're loading in here. This is what it's telling you to create this file here, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it in. So what's happening here is when this configuration is being loaded, it's requiring dap. It's loading dap up, and it's saving it as a local variable named dap. Then it's loading up dap-ui, and it's saving it as a local variable dap-ui because we're going to be using it down here. Before I even do that, I'm actually going to set up a key binding just like we did in the other file, doing the exact same thing. But this one is using a lua command because they didn't have a dap-ui doesn't have a built-in toggle thing, so you have to actually call the lua require command to do it. But this right here is a command that you could actually just type in down here. If you typed in, you could say lua require, you can put that command in right here, just like that. This exact command from lua all the way to the end of this toggle function call, and it will work. That's how you toggle on and off the dap-ui. So I just wanted to make a key binding for it. So this one's leader du. So all the leader Ds are the dap stuff. So the U one is the UI. If you want to open up the UI, that toggles the UI on. So that's just a key binding. These other here, they're slightly different from his video, and I got these from a website from the GitHub page. Where is it? So here's nvim-dap. We've already passed it. There wasn't really anything of consequence I needed to do here. Here's dap-ui, and they have some examples down here on how to set this up. Where is it? Right here. So this is what I have in there. Besides the this exact thing, the local dap and dap-ui equals these two requires, and then setting these up. This is just how it's telling me to set it up, and it's very similar to how Dreams of Code has it set up. So there's 3 lines instead of 4, and these two are different. So maybe it has changed, in the last year, the package has changed or something. I'm not really sure. But I'm just taking the config right from here. That's exactly what I'm using right here. For this part of the config right there is taken from there, and up here, this part of the config right here is taken from there. So this is just added in key binding that I'm adding in. And again, this key binding only gets, or key mapping only gets mapped when this package has been loaded. So we're going to save that one. That gives us dap-ui. And we also need dap-python. So if we go back to here, we have dap-python, and it's very much the same things going on here. It's this one actually gets loaded on a file type. Now, so none of those other things got loaded. They didn't get loaded by lazy. Nothing's loading them. This one, when we open up a Python file, this is going to load this, and this is going to require the other packages. So let's grab this. We'll go back into, so that's how all this loading stuff is happening here. So I'm going to put it down here. So whenever I open a file type that's of type Python, it's going to say, hey, I need to load nvim-dap and nvim-dap-ui. nvim-dap-ui also needs this. All those things are suddenly going to get loaded. So if I'm in a Lua file, none of this stuff gets loaded at all. But the second I open a Python file, this whole string of events happens. So this is the package that's, from GitHub that's being loaded. This is the file type that it's being loaded on. Here are the dependencies. And you could probably just put the UI as a dependency, but they had dap there too. So it doesn't really matter because the UI is going to require dap anyway. And then this very same thing that you see over and over again that I'm doing, it's in the configs folder, and it's going to be called dap-python. So we're going to need a file there. So I'm going to save this and go over here. Whoops, it's just telling me it's reloading. Okay, and I'm going to make a new file. I'll call it dap-python.lua. And what we're putting in there, this is very much from his video. So in his video, he makes this local, he just does it inside of the plugins.lua file, and I've just pulled it out into a separate file, but he's setting the path. That is the Mason package that's being for debug py. So the Mason package for debug py, if you're using a system package, you'll need a different path here. But if you're using the Mason one, that's what this path is. And then it's just requiring it, and it's passing that path into its setup. And then down here, we see the same thing. This is what he's done here. This is for if you're doing a test method. And this is in his video. He does a DPR on it. So it's just that. And the reason why it looks slightly different here is just because of Lua, Style Lua. Style Lua has just formatted this one differently. When I change it back, it changes it again. Watch. If I go like this, and let's see here. This should be indented in. Oops. That's kind of how the other ones looked, but if I save this, Style Lua is going to change it. Yeah, so it's the same things going on. The first one says normal mode, the next one is the key that's being pressed, and then this one is a function. So that's probably why it's formatting it differently, but there's a function that is requiring a dap-python test method, and that's the end of the function, and then there's the description on it. So this is, again, straight out of his video. This is if you're running tests on Python, on Python projects, and this seems to work. So let's save that, and let's see if there's any more. The very last thing, he's using, he's putting his packages in. Let's see here. It's like require install or require. I forget what it is he's using. Maybe we can see it here. And you can still do that as well. It's totally valid. Should be in plugins, and right here, ensure install. So he's doing this on the Mason thing, and this is fine too. I just went in a different route. For one, I try to make everything. When you do this, you have to tell it to install all. And I think when you also say install all, it installs packages you don't want installed sometimes. I can't remember. There were some issues I had with this. But I want things to just automatically be installed for me without messing around. So if I have my configure file exactly the way I like it, and I go to a new system, or I just deleted my local folder or something like that, I can just pull that file down, and it just sets everything up without me doing anything else. I can just launch it, and it just works. So that's why I'm not using this. But you can use this. So he does this, he throws them in here, and then he does the Mason install all. It's still valid. But what I've done is I've used these Mason helper things, mason-conform, mason-lint, mason-lspconfig. These guys are automatically downloading the packages there. So I'm going to do the same thing for dap. I'm going to do it a little bit lazier because what's happening is we have dap and then we have dap-python, and dap-python needs debug py. So it doesn't really work together the same as the other one. So what I did is I just put in the package I need, which is debug py. I just put it into the file. You'll see it here in a second. So yeah, in mine. So that's the very last thing I've done here. And you can just install this too by just saying mason install debug py. That'll work as well. But again, I just want it as code so it'll automatically do the thing. So the very last thing I'm doing is mason-nvim-dap. And it doesn't work the way it's intended. None of these Mason ones work the way they're intended. So I always have to manually put in. Only one of the packages ever worked correctly. They're meant to automatically install, and they just never do. So this is the same thing. Here's the package. This one I'm setting on very lazy. Very lazy means I want this to run whenever I start up Neovim, NvChad. I want this to run. I want it to be loaded. And all this thing, when it loads, it's just checking to see if I need to install the package, if it's missing. But I don't want it to slow down my startup of Neovim. So putting it on very lazy says, hey, I want this to run, but it can be after everything is up and running. We want Neovim to start up really fast. And then when everything's done and sorted, then it can check. So that's what this event very lazy means. It says, hey, do it in your own time. Don't slow down my startup. And we've just passed it off to this mason-dap file again. So I'm going to do that. We're going to make that file over there. This one is a mason-dap Lua. Okay. And it's very straightforward. It's probably bigger than it needs to be, but it's just this. So it's just setting up this package, and I'm manually telling it because it doesn't automatically work, even though it's supposed to automatically work. And I know if you tell it to load the other module first, it's supposed to, and it just doesn't work that way. At least not for NvChad. Maybe it works on a base system. I'm not really sure. So basically, I'm just telling it directly right here. And what this Python is this as actually debug py. So debug py. Debug py is actually called Python. This is another funny thing about the Mason packages. It's actually just called Python. So Python is actually debug py. And I added this other one down here. This can be on or off, but I actually wanted exclude, just because if there's anything you don't want installed and somehow it's being installed, you can add it here as an ignore list. So I just added that. Otherwise, this line doesn't need to be here. But I always want to give people an option to have something not installed. So this should automatically grab debug py when we start up. So everything is saved here. I'm going to close all these. Okay. So let's look at this. I'm going to restart this. Or we should get, so we got some packages installing, and down here we have debug py was installed. And everything looks good. I'm just going to restart again. It didn't really need to, but so we're in here. So what can we do? We can go to the other one and check out his testing, but right away, remember I said you could start up you can toggle it. If we want to do that, it's going to be, and you're going to see it appear here, and it's not very bright, but I'm going to set a breakpoint. So let's set a breakpoint like here. So I'm going to go space D and B for breakpoint. And there's a B right here. I know it's probably hard to see. It might be to do with my theme. I'm not really sure, but there is a B there. Okay, so I could type in like Lua require Oh yeah, there it is. I don't know what the story with this menu. I'm not an expert in the debugging, but I'm sure you can also set this up more, but I just want it to work. So right here, we can see that the position X is 4. That's actually where the breakpoint was, right here. Maybe I shouldn't have done it on a game. There we go. But I'm not an expert in it, but at least it works. We can see that it works. What he showed in his video. So what he showed in his video was the test function thing. So I just had an LLM make a fake Python program with the test. So I'm in the test examples of so here's this just example nonsense, and here's the test one. So I could put a breakpoint here. Oh, come on. For some reason, every time I'm in here, the first time I press space, it ignores it. I'm not sure if that's something I've done wrong somewhere, or if that's just a part of NvChad. So I've set the breakpoint, and now he put in that space, D, P, and R, as in run a test method. And that's this. So that works. To do what he was doing with this whole test thing, you need unit test setup. So I haven't used this debugger adapter protocol much, so I don't really know much about it, but I was kept being asked, could I get this working? So hopefully this is enough for anybody who does know how to use this to set up their own key bindings, or to use it the way they want it, or I'm just kind of showing you how to port this over from what Dreams of Code had into the non-null-ls version, non-NvChad 2.0 to the 2.5 version. So it all seems to be kind of working the way that I think it should work. I haven't used it very much, to be honest. And I think that is it. So yeah, again, you don't need to use these things. I'm just me being fancy, or trying to understand how all of this works together. But yeah, that's the UI part that we were just looking at. So you do need all these different steps in, and I tried to stay faithful to what he was doing. But like I said, I did add several key bindings. I added the continue one, so you can just get into it, because the only way you could get into it from his setup was to go through the Python unit test thing. So I did add in a couple extra key bindings here and there, and was testing things out and trying things. And I did disable the Pyright. I got stuck trying to figure out how to get it to turn off other things that I could never get it to turn off, and I didn't realize about the indentation either, so I kind of got stuck in the video there. But yeah, I tried to do all the things that he did, and hopefully that explains to people what's going on and how to convert other things over, because a lot of this stuff just converts over, and the other stuff is just understanding. You can just put things in other files and how you move things over and everything like that. And this is kind of the file structure. Like, this isn't my file structure. This is the NvChad. You have configs and you have plugin, and I'm just taking advantage of the configs folder. It automatically does that. I'm not really changing anything here. Mappings. This is for global mappings, if I want to change any global mappings, and for global things. So the reason why I set those key mappings in those specific things is because they'll only be mapped at those specific times. So you wouldn't be using them without the DAP loaded. So I hope that was helpful to everybody, or educational or entertaining. And if you have any questions, you can give an ask in the YouTube, is probably where you'll see them at. And thanks for watching. Bye.